have just poured into that area. Is there anything more that can be done congressionally, legislatively to help these folks?
In a moment like this, we feel just as helpless as everyone else does. I've talked to my colleagues there in Texas, Chip Roy and August Pfluger, whose families, that's Chip's district. August's daughters were at the camp. We also had Betty Carter of Georgia, had grandchildren there. It touches so many families, and all we know to do at this moment is pray. Every available resource has been deployed. The president, of course, is dialed in and watching this develop moment by moment as we are, and we'll handle supplemental funding requests as they come in, but right now they're still trying to do rescue and recovery, and our hearts go out to all of them.
I can hardly stomach it. At the time that I'm recording this video, 69 people are reported dead from the floods in Kerr County, Texas. And Republicans are saying that nothing could have been done to prevent this tragedy. That is a bold-faced lie. Hi, my name is Suri Crowe, and you're watching the MeidasTouch Network. These people are just sociopaths. Mike Johnson, Governor Greg Abbott, amongst many others, Chip Roy, all of those who called for Sunday as a day of prayer, as desperate families and search and rescue crews looked for survivors of this devastating flood, which overwhelmed homes and bridges in about half an hour in the early morning hours of the 4th of July. Texas officials blamed the tremendous loss of life on the National Weather Service and NOAA for the lack of forecast warnings.
From the National Weather Service predicted 3 to 6 inches of rain in the Concho Valley and 4 to 8 inches of rain in the Hill Country. We worked with our own meteorologists to fine-tune that weather statement, and as many of you know, and many of you in broadcast journalism and meteorology, you can go back and look at your own forecast, and the amount of rain that fell in this specific location was never in any of those forecasts.
Which is just completely rich, considering that a year ago, it's highly likely that many of these lives could have been saved if the Trump regime, by way of Elon Musk's Doge department, hadn't cut 30% of the NOAA funding by $2 billion and 600 staff positions. Meteorologists say they predicted the Texas floods as best they could. But with the National Weather Service operating under severe budget cuts under the Trump regime, there's only so much that they can do. Here is Rick Spinrad, former chief of NOAA.
Offices now are not operating at full complement of staff, which means that you're really putting an extra burden on these folks. I don't know how much that was a factor in what happened in Texas this weekend. Without research, without staff to do the work, we can assume that the predictions, and not just hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, drought, wildfires, tsunamis, for that matter, are undoubtedly going to degrade. And that means that people's ability to prepare for these storms will be compromised. Pick your favorite football team. Now imagine that team has, instead of 11 players, has 8 players. They're going to lose. No matter how good they are, they can't do the job of the full team. And that's what's happening at NOAA. Is these are outstanding scientists, wonderful technicians, terrific policy folks. But if we don't have enough of them doing the job, then something falls off the table.
I mean, yeah, You're operating with Band-Aids and Q-tips at this point. And even with the short staffing that the National Weather Service had, they did send out alerts to Texas officials. But Kerr County Judge Rob Kelly admitted that citizens weren't warned earlier because the county does not have a warning system.
Yesterday, Texas Department of Emergency Management put out an all call and said there's going to be a problem. We knew there was going to be a problem. Why weren't these camps evacuated?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Well, you're the judge. I mean, you're the top official here in this county. Why can't you answer that? There are kids missing. These camps were in harm's way. We knew this flood was coming.
We didn't know this flood was coming. Rest assured, no one knew this kind of flood was coming. We have floods all the time. This is the most dangerous river valley in the United States.
I agree.
And we deal with floods on a regular basis. When it rains, we get water. We had no reason to believe that this was going to be anything like what's happened here.
While people died, Governor Greg Abbott and Mike Johnson offered thoughts and prayers, and Trump danced. And played golf. But this is what happens when you live in a Sharia state, a white Christian nationalist theocracy, where science is thrown out the door in exchange for money and power. And as a result, people die. And get ready for so much more of this, because now that the Theo Bros have ripped away our healthcare, and as the death toll rises like the floodwaters that took these victims, Texas Republicans will continue to deny science and shrink governmental agencies that literally save lives. We've seen what this does to aviation safety. We're watching the horror unfold again with climate change, and we will again and again and again. When in 2 years, about 20 million of us don't have healthcare coverage anymore, and thousands start to unnecessarily die.
Just poured into that area. Is there anything more that can be done congressionally, legislatively to help these folks?
In a moment like this, we feel just as helpless as everyone else does. It touches so many families, and all we know to do at this moment is pray.
I would say to Mike Johnson, go look at the parents of those dead children, look them in the eye and say those words. But the truth is, I think most Republicans would do that with a straight face. I think they have sold what souls they may have had at one time. They are just, like I said, sociopaths. Life doesn't matter to them as long as they have money and power. They just proved that to us by passing the megadeath bill. And, just for the record, I am a person of faith, but I left my megachurch because of fake Christians like Governor Greg Abbott, because of people like Mike Johnson and so many others who get up there with their pious faith and their fake Christian quotes when they are not walking out what Christ himself preached at all. Because what the Bible also says, Mike Johnson, is faith without works is dead. And when you take away healthcare for probably 20 million people, when you take away science and funding for the National Weather Service and for NOAA and for climate change and study, when you take away funding for USAID, when you are removing aid for suffering people in Gaza, innocent Palestinians, but you have no problem blowing up our already disgustingly bloated, defense budget and making more bombs, you are not following Christ. That is not Christianity. It's the very opposite. And you would be the exact people whom Christ would say, "Depart from me, I never knew you." And your day will come, because that is not Christianity. It is white Christian nationalism. Very different things. And, I just want to say that science is not separate from having a belief or a faith tradition in God or whatever faith it is that you follow. I am a firm science girl. I grew up in a family that was rooted in science and education. I recently fractured my arm for the second time. I actually did pray about it because I was in agonizing pain. But the next day I went up and went straight to the orthopedic surgeon's office where they did things like take x-rays, and I had to get an MRI. I didn't just say, okay, I'm going to lay here and wait for you to heal it, God. It doesn't work like that. And I'm just really tired of these fake MAGA Christians who have nothing behind them other than their fake. Anyway, I think you get where I'm going with this. So I am praying. The very first thing I did when I heard about this horrific flooding in Texas, the first thing I did is pray with a pastor I followed for a long time. His name is Max Lucado, and he lives in San Antonio. And my heart is breaking for these families of all of the missing victims and animals in South Texas right now. It is a horrific situation, but it could have largely been avoided if Donald Trump and his selfish MAGA cult hadn't defunded things that we need to prevent tragedies like this. And now they're defanging FEMA too. It's where we are, people. Anyway, let me know what your thoughts are. Thanks for watching. I'll see you back here soon.
Love this video? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch and help us blow past 1 million followers.